in the summer once, and I've never experienced heat like that in my life. It was
It's been
insane.
really, really rough. Yeah. We've been having a lot of haboobs, like the big windstorms,
Uh-huh.
or dust storms lately, and it's been pretty miserable. It's just dust blowing everywhere. I saw someone online say that they could grow mushrooms in the dust in their lungs, and it feels very, very true.
And you're
And
like, yep,
trees
that,
down all over the place.
oh
Yeah.
man.
And the worst is you're not guaranteed any rain. It could just be windy and dusty and then move on and rain somewhere else, which is what it did to us yesterday. So it's not the best time to visit.
Yeah, I was like, that's just the weather being rude, honestly.
For
Well,
real.
I am so excited that we are here with Liana, whose book Mutual Discord came out last week. So excited. We've already been chatting a little bit about how exciting release week is and all that, but we'll get into all that. Liana, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. All right, Caitlin's gonna kick it off.
Yeah, I'm gonna kick it off. So you have said that you wrote short stories as a kid, and so I'm curious, were these romance storylines from even when you were a kid?
No, they were always set around a family. It was always
Okay.
like a family drama, like a big family. And it was more, I would say, like coming of age, more sibling dynamics, more like the protagonists trying to find their way in the world. I think that was very, apropos for where I was at the age I was writing all of those.
Yeah.
But I've always rooted for couples to come together. And like no matter what I watched or read, if there was like a hint of romance in it, I was in. I was invested. And so sometimes I would just be disappointed because nothing would come of it. Um,
Mm.
and that's kind of eventually what led me to the romance genre because I wanted that to be the focus.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I also, hearing you say that when you were younger, you were focused on big families and sibling dynamics, I was a huge fan of your Luna Sister series. And it seems like you've
Oh,
kept a lot of those themes present in the things that you have now written as an adult, because I can see in every book that I've read of yours the importance of family ties.
oh, absolutely. It's one of my favorite things to incorporate in my books, our family dynamics, how we interact with those, we love, even the families that we create on our own, right? Our own
Mm.
found families. I very much enjoy those, exploring those dynamics. Mutual Discord, my newest release, is a standalone, but Sophia, the female protagonist, her connection with her family is very important as well. And I just think that that's probably going to feature in everything I write, just because I enjoy it.
Yeah. It seems like another thing that is heavily featured in everything that you write is some historical element. And so you minored in Mexican history, if I'm correct. And you said that you've saved all of your textbooks from college, like through every move. So was there a moment when you realized that your academic side and your romance reader side were going to end up together in the same career?
I think I've always been chasing that just sort of like as a passion thing. I never thought that I would be a writer. I just didn't. It just wasn't like
Hmm.
on my radar. And even when I discovered, kind of fell back into reading romances as an adult, I was a stay at home mom, and romances were a lovely way to escape from the realities of being a stay at home
Hmm.
mom. I was reading historicals by and large. I read some contemporaries here and there, but I was mostly reading historicals because they are the perfect blend of romance, which I love, and then history. And so when my husband challenged me to write my own romance novel, it like wasn't even a consideration. I just knew that it would be historical because I that's that convergence between the two is what I love. And so, even in Mutual Discord, it's a contemporary. But when I was thinking about what Sophia's like job would be, she's an influencer. I was like, what would she be talking about on social media? To me, it was like a no-brainer that she would do historical feminist figures and talk about them. And so, I guess I'm always trying to find a way to kind of fit history into my work because that's just the sweet spot for me, like I said.
Yeah. So your husband is the person who encouraged you to write your first book?
He is. He, I have a
We
story-
love a
I'm
green
sure-
flag in a man.
Yes. And he is. He's the best. I've shared the story before, so I'm sure like readers of mine are like, ugh, Liana, this story again. But it's a part of my lore. I had just read Sarah MacLean's No Good Duke Goes Unpunished.
Mm-hmm.
And part of her is it the Fallen Angels series, and there was like a big reveal at the end about the protagonist for the fourth book, and it like blew my mind. And when my husband came home, he was like, you know, how are the kids, how was your day? And I didn't tell him anything about that. I was like, let me tell you about this book I just read. And he like patiently let me word vomit all about this book to him and how amazing it was. And he was like, have you ever thought of writing your own book? And my honest to God first response was, I'm not smart enough to write the kind of books that I like to read. And he gave me that patient, don't be an idiot look that, you know, your significant other gives you. And it was like, well, why don't you learn? And I was like, yeah, why don't I learn? And so I think I joined RWA within maybe the week. I just needed the encouragement, I think. And he apparently knew that because he was willing to give it. So yeah, he was the first one to be like, go off, go write something. And he's been supportive ever since.
That's
Liana,
amazing.
really quickly, I think we're catching all the audio still, but you're freezing on video. So just like as a thought, I think
Oh.
we're still catching all the audio. But
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you're seeing that at all on your end, but we can hear you.
I'm not. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
No worries.
Okay, good.
No, no, you're all good.
Yeah, I'm not catching it at all.
You've described being a Gemini sun who loves to learn and share what she learns. And so what's an obsession or rabbit hole that ends up sneaking into your books in small ways?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I really think it just depends on the project and what I happen to come across while I'm working on that project. The most notable one I can think about, because I just wrote it, is from Mutual Discord.
Mm-hmm.
One of the Matildas, her series, her social media series is called The Matildas, after the Matilda effect. And one of the Matildas that she talks about is Alice Ball. And I came across her while doing research, and I was like, well, I'm going to find a way to put her in this book because I thought she was fascinating. Her story was so sad, and I like wanted to include it. And now every time anyone asks, which one is your favorite Matilda? I'm like, oh, well, Alice Ball is my favorite. And I will say, my next project, my next book, which will be out at the beginning of the year, I've talked about it on social media a lot, as my Victorian mountain climber series. And it literally came about from a hyperfixation I had about mountain climbing. And I like just watched all the documentaries, read so many books for like a 2 to 3 week period. And my dad was like, are you writing a book about this? And I said, no, I just find it really interesting. And I was like, I should write a book about this. And so that's when my hyperfixation came in handy. And I have to say, I wrote the book in 2019, and I'm still endlessly fascinated with climbing culture, climbers, all of that lore around it. I just think it's so cool. So I can't wait to finally get to showcase that a little bit when this new book comes out next year.
Real quickly, we're going to talk more about Mutual Discord in a little bit, but just for folks who haven't gotten a chance to read it yet, can you say what the Matilda effect is?
Oh, absolutely. So the Matilda effect is it's coined to identify the phenomenon of women, usually in STEM, being forgotten or erased or pushed out from their discoveries. And I didn't borrow the term, I used the term in Mutual Discord, but Sophia borrowed the Matilda effect to name her series, The Matildas. So in my head, anytime I think about historical female figures who had their work stolen from them, whether it was STEM or not, even if it was in the arts or whatever other sphere, I always think of them as the Matildas.
Love that. It was new to me when I read Mutual Discord. The
Same.
effect, fascinating. Yeah.
I'm so glad.
Yeah, I learned a lot, and I really connected with the idea of that series because I'd actually come across a series. I don't remember who the creator was now, but she was highlighting furniture designers from like the 20s, 30s, and 40s who were women, but who were overshadowed by like the men in their line of work. And so I immediately thought of that as I was reading this book. I was thinking specifically about Ray Eames, because I assumed Charles and Ray Eames, I assumed Ray was a man. Sorry, I did. And I've learned so much about her since.
I think I did too. That's amazing. See, and it's also very sad how it happens across all sectors, all parts of life. Women are forever, pushed to the background of their own discoveries. It's very infuriating.
Yes, 100%. Christine, you want to kick us off in talking about historical romance?
Sure, yeah. So the Luna Sister series came out of research you did. We have a theme here, research, into Mexican immigration records and the second French occupation of Mexico. This is like a piece of history that I'm guessing a lot of romance readers, or maybe even readers in general, haven't encountered. So what's it like for you watching readers fall in love with a couple or a romance story first and then learning about the politics or the history?
What was that like?
Yeah, like how have you seen like a reaction from readers of like, you get this chance to fall in love with like a romantic story, but then also learn about politics and culture and history through your books as well.
Yes, actually, I kind of love that. I've received a fair share of like reader emails talking about stuff that they learned from reading my books, or how they didn't know this nugget of history. One of the things I always giggle at, because it comes around every year, is Cinco de Mayo. Here in the US, we have an association with Cinco de Mayo and what it means. And obviously the popular belief is that it is like Mexican Independence Day, which it is not. It's simply a commemoration of one battle of a war that the Mexicans defeated the French army at the Battle of Puebla, and then the French came back a year later and beat the Mexican army then, which is what jump-started or kick-started the Luna Sister series and why the sisters flee Mexico for London. So I love that whenever Cinco de Mayo comes around, I'm always like tagged and stuff, because people associate the sisters with that event. And I'm not mad about that. I think that's really great. I've had other people tell me that they've won like trivia games because they knew some tidbit of information that they learned in one of my books. And I just think that's so cool. You mentioned me being a Gemini sun. I equate that to me just being curious. I really like to learn details. I like to learn obscure facts. I like to collect them like I'm Smaug on my hoard of jewels. And what I'm going to do with them, I have no idea. But I just like learning them. So if I have an opportunity to share these like random nuggets of information with people through my books or whatever the case may be, I'm going to take that opportunity. And I've had my editor tell me like more than once, this is all fascinating, but remember, this is a romance. And it's about the romance and the main couple and not these like obscure details I try to like shoehorn in about Victorian mountain climbing practices. I don't know. It's also an affliction. I want to tell everybody all these random details.
Well, funny you should say trivia, because one thing about Caitlin and I is we hosted trivia games during the pandemic, first for
Oh,
like friends and
fun.
family online, but then for like companies, and it was really fun. So we love a good
Mhm.
trivia fact.
We do.
Oh, me too.
And what you just said kind of led into my next question, which was going to be, how do you think about balancing like historical content and romantic content in your books? That sounds like maybe sometimes you lean too heavily into one, but
I do. I've learned through my career that I have to write the first draft first and then include the historical details second. Because if I don't, I either get pulled away because I fall down research rabbit holes for like literally a line of dialogue. I've done that before. Or I tell myself, okay, I need to know these details before I start writing because I need to know, what X, Y, and Z. And then I don't start writing for, X number of weeks because I'm researching. So I've learned I have to at least have the skeleton of the story, the romantic points, like the beats. I have to have them already written in. And then while I'm writing that first draft, I'm like leaving myself so many notes. So many notes, like, fill in here. When I was writing Neutral Discord, it was what Matilda can you put here? Who would fit in this spot? What was the historical temperature in August in like 1862 or whatever the case may be. Like, I leave all this stuff for myself because if I stop to figure that out, to go research it, I probably won't start writing again for a while. So that is a big way that I manage to balance the two. Sometimes though, sometimes I go a little overboard with the history part. I know a common critique of Anna Maria and the Fox, the first Luna Sisters book, is that it can be very history heavy, and some people think it sways more historical fiction because of that, which I understand. Like, I understand that critique and I get it. In my defense, it was the first book in the series, right? So it had to set the world
yeah.
and like establish all the players and who, what the stakes were. And so, yeah, it probably was a little more romance heavy, or not romance, historical heavy, but I don't apologize for it. It's just kind of how that book worked out. I feel like it's whatever the story needs is what I try to give it. And, Anna Maria and Gideon in that book, Anna Maria and the Fox, are very involved in politics, and they have these big world ideas and they want to do big things. So the world I had to craft around them felt very big, right? And so I had to pull that in. Whereas in the subsequent sisters, their plots, their point, what they were working towards was a lot smaller. So I didn't have to introduce as much of that stuff in because it didn't serve their story, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
In defense of the Luna Sisters, I did not think that it was too heavy on the history in the first book because that is also the background for which the other sisters are experiencing London as well. Like, you had to do a lot of setup in that book, knowing that you were going to have books that follow in which those girls are operating within that world. And it's a significant part of who they are. And that plays into the relationships that they have.
I'm glad that you got that. I appreciate it. Because yes, I completely agree.
So, one thing you've talked about in writing historical fiction, I mean, not fiction, historical romance, now I'm slipping up. Okay. In writing historical romance, you said that the genre is kind of more diverse, feminist wave, hasn't always found its way to the older, maybe historical romance readership. So, 3 historical romance books plus later, like, has anything shifted for you in how you think readers are finding your historicals?
No. um, this is such a complex discussion, I think, because I think there's a lot of things at play in it. I will say this. I think that the traditional historical romance market is incredibly soft right now. I think there's a few authors who continue to do really well. Alex Asti being one of them. She is a rock star and
Yes.
writes beautiful historicals that have done really well, in the traditional space. Virginia Heath continues to publish traditionally. Joanna Shoup. So, and obviously Sarah MacLean. Like, there's these authors who continue to do really well, but I think the vast majority are not. I pivoted to write Mutual Discord because I knew that I would not be able to write historical in the traditional market, at least for the time being. And I was willing and kind of looking for another change of pace. And so Mutual Discord gave me that. But I still think discoverability is really hard. I think that a lot of people thought that with Bridgerton there would be more of a bump. No, I don't think there's really any crossover readers. I think anyone who was interested in historical romance after watching the series read Julia's books and then maybe didn't move on to others for whatever reason. I think that my books are heavy on the history. I think that they feature diverse heroines that I think that some segments of the historical romance readership feel maybe anachronistic, right? Like, oh, there were no Latinas like in high society in Victorian England, which whatever. I'm not trying, those are obviously not my readers, right? So I think that there's been a struggle with that, I think, for my romances. But frankly, I think that great things are happening in the indie sphere, and more readers are finding historical romance there. And I mentioned I have my Victorian Mountain Climber series, and I will be independently publishing that because I still love historicals, and I still want to tell historical stories. And if the traditional publishing sphere is not eager for historicals right now, I know that there are readers out there, and I hope they find my mountain climbers.
Well, we will find them because that sounds so fascinating. Yeah, I love
It's so fun.
Yeah, I love this kind of like obsession, can I say, with research and and bringing that into your books. I think it's fascinating. I mean, I think you also seem to kind of tackle some harder topics head on. I mean, you're talking about Puerto Rico in the latest book. In the Luna Sister series, you know, Gabriella and Isabel navigate society very differently based on their kind of proximity to whiteness and how they're perceived. I guess are there times when you're writing those scenes that you feel like that felt like especially hard to get right, whether it's talking about the Luna Sister series and those kind of conversations about, let's say, race or things like that, or in this newer one and talking about Puerto Rico?
Yeah, I don't ever go into a book thinking I'm going to talk about X, Y, and Z, right? Like, I know some authors have like themes in mind or things they want to explore. I'm usually focused on the romance, and then in crafting my characters, I try to talk about things that I think would be important to them. And so knowing that, Sophia in Mutual Discord is a very proud Boricua, right? She's very proud of her heritage, which is kind of set up against Alex, the male, like the love interest, who is Puerto Rican himself, but is much more disconnected from the culture. And so knowing that about them, it felt natural for them to have these sort of conversations about what it means to be Puerto Rican in 2026, what it means to be Latina. And even so, for Sophia as a Latina woman in corporate America, right? Like what it means to have her work stolen from her and then to lose her job. And then she stumbles into content creation, but what does it mean for her when we know that the algorithms, right, do not bolster or do not do any favors for BIPOC creators? What does that mean for her going forward? And so these discussions that they have in the book just kind of happen naturally with me thinking about what it would be like to be these characters in this world. And it felt disingenuous not to talk about these things that I feel would affect them. And the same with the Luna sisters. You know, you mentioned about Gabby and Isabel's like proximity to whiteness. Isabel is the middle sister. She's the one that has like all the indigenous roots and talks about being the darkest of the three, and Gabby being the most who most resembles their Spanish ancestors, right? She's the güera one. She's like the light-skinned one. And so how they moved about in society mattered, because that matters, and how, you know, how we are judged by the world, right? When we step out our door. And to not talk about those things felt insulting to the characters, because it would be something that they dealt with. And I think I touched on this in the books. Maybe Ana Maria like mentioned it. I'm not sure. One of them did, about even their accents, right? Like when I'm writing, I'm not necessarily writing with them having these, you know, Mexican accents, but they absolutely would have. And when they're at a ball or they're, you know, talking with somebody, they can't hide their accent. It's there. And people automatically assume things when they hear an accent, whether for bad or, you know, or good. People have opinions. And so they're all just things that I felt like would be discussed, that they would encounter. And I wanted to talk about it because that felt authentic to the characters and to their experience as Mexican women in Victorian London. It felt authentic to Sophia as a Puerto Rican, you know, professional, new to content creation. These were things that I think were important, and that's why I think it's very key for any writer who's going to write outside of their experience, whether they are a white writer who's going to write Latina characters, or they're, you know, an able-bodied writer who's going to write disabled characters, or whatever, you know, the case may be. There are like nuances to that experience that you're writing that you may not be familiar with because it's not your experience. And I think that it's crucial to work with authenticity readers, sensitivity readers, to make sure that you are doing your due diligence to portray those characters in the best way that you can. I'm half Puerto Rican, and I still had an authenticity reader for Sophia and Alex, because what I know about my culture might not be what others know, and I wanted to be as inclusive as possible. And the same was true for the Luna sisters. Each of the books had someone read just to make sure that I got it right, or that I didn't get it glaringly wrong, right? Like I hope people don't expect perfection, but I want them to expect care. And I hope that they can tell that I took care with these characters.
Appreciate that. And I think a good place to pivot to kind of your experience writing some of your heritage on the page. Caitlin, do you want to?
Yeah, so one of the things that stuck out to me the most about Mutual Discord was the connection to culture through food. And I don't know if you meant for that to be a theme to emerge from that book, but like that is what I latched onto. And food plays such a central role in Alex discovering his Puerto Rican heritage. And so how did you decide to make food a focal point in his cultural discovery and in Sophia's cultural identity?
I feel like food is such an easy, accessible way to be introduced to a new culture. And in Alex's situation, he grew up a military brat. His parents were both active military. They moved around all over the place. He mentions that him and his sisters were always were born in different states, and his parents didn't have the time or the privilege to be able to make authentic Puerto Rican food at home. And poor Alex was missing out because authentic Puerto Rican food is amazing. And so it felt like an easy way for Sophia to introduce Alex to the culture, right? Through your stomach. Through, because you're not just eating it, you're gathering together to eat it. And or you might also be gathering together to make it. In the case of Noche Buena, which is celebrated on Christmas Eve, they all get together at Sophia's parents' house and they make pasteles, which are sort of like if you've made tamales before, they it's like a whole process that you go through to make the masa, and then you assemble it and do it. Pasteles are very much the same way. And so that was like a way to get him involved and to touch the plantain leaves and to, you know, assemble the very thing that he's going to eat, that his ancestors assembled to. And I wrote about the food too because I think for a lot of Puerto Ricans, like reading about or listening, if you listen to the audiobook, listening to Sophia talk about making pernil or making arroz con dulces or anything like that, like there's a smell, there's like a memory that those words like conjure up. And so that was, I feel like that's a really great way to kind of like loop in the in crowd, right? Those in the community, like, oh yeah, like I know that we make those too. And now I'm just making myself hungry.
Me too.
This stuff. So that was, I think that's why including food and doing it the way I did, like what I was trying to accomplish when I did that. I was trying to introduce Alex to the culture while also pulling in my Puerto Rican readers as well. Like you know how delicious it is and how good it smells and all those other things too.
Well, I will say, even not as Puerto Ricans, Caitlin was texting me saying this book is making me hungry. So you got all of us at least very engaged in the book through that food description.
I'm so glad.
Yeah. So you kind of just shared that, like, through food, it was a way for you to celebrate Puerto Rican heritage, and that anybody who is Puerto Rican who is reading your book would be able to find something familiar in this. And you've also mentioned that Puerto Rico is part of your own heritage. And so what did it feel like to be able to explore that part of your own heritage on the page?
It was intimidating. Through the Luna Sisters, I think I've developed a reputation of being like a Mexican American author, which I am. I'm half Mexican American, but showcasing my Puerto Rican heritage was different, and I really worried about getting it wrong. And I think a lot of that really ties into Alex's storyline, which I poured a lot of my my own feelings of disconnection that I used to have to my Puerto Rican culture. I poured into Alex. I grew up in the desert Southwest, where my mother's Mexican American family has lived for literal generations. And I've been surrounded by my Mexican American family. And I have a very large Puerto Rican family, but they live on the East Coast. They lived, at the time, they lived in New York, and now they live in Florida, and they're in different states. But I didn't get to see them one-on-one. I didn't get to experience Noche Buena with them. I didn't get to make pasteles with them. I didn't get to do these things with them. So there was kind of a disconnect. And I was very lucky that when I was a teenager, we moved to New York, and I lived in the Bronx, and we lived with my Puerto Rican family, and it was like full-on immersion into it. And it happened at a very kind of a pivotal age where I kind of just soaked it all up like a sponge. And since obviously I returned and I live in Arizona now, and I continue to be surrounded by my Mexican American culture, but I really, really wanted to tell a story that highlighted, that part of me that I don't always get to indulge, or I don't always get to spend time with, and writing Mutual Discord allowed me to do that. And I did it in a way that felt comfortable for me. So it's set in Arizona. Sophia and Alex live in Phoenix, where I live. And, Sophia is much more connected to the culture because her parents are from the island. She was born on the island. And bringing in Alex, who, has felt this long disconnect, but an eagerness to learn, it was a fun exploration for me to be able to just spend time with them and to reconnect with, my culture in ways I haven't recently. So, and as I mentioned, I did have a reader read for the representation, just to make sure that I was getting it right as well, because you can be in the group and still make mistakes. And so I'm really, really glad that I was able to tell Sophia and Alex's story and have it reflect my own experience with the culture in the way that it did.
Yeah. I think that you can also really feel that on the page. Like I felt a connection there, and I thought that was something that was really special. And you were able to do that through two very different lenses, through Sophia and through Alex.
That makes me very happy to hear.
So early on, you described this as a book about feminine rage, which I was also raging in chapter 1 of this book. I was, ready to ride at dawn with Sophia. So I get it. But this is also your first time playing with the friends to lovers by way of cheating adjacent trope. And so now that it's finished, does it feel like it's still as messy and risky as it did when you were first drafting it?
Yes and no. At the time that I was drafting it, my editor wanted me to lean into the love triangle of it all. And I was trying to find a way to do it in a way that felt natural. So I had to move people places, right? Sophia and Alex live in Phoenix. Caitlin, her best friend, lives in New York. So it made things easier. And I think a big part of, it's not a secret, a big part of the book is miscommunication. And I know that there are romance readers everywhere that are like, ugh, miscommunication. Everyone gets so frustrated with it. And I understand, I do too. But also, we're human and we miscommunicate all the time. And I felt very strongly that if this plot were going to work, there would have to be a major miscommunication plot point, and I would have to justify it with a lot of character work, right? Why would Sophia believe these things? How did this come about? I had to spend time with her and sharing her with the reader for them to even think it plausible for things to happen the way that they did. Now, whether I succeeded or not is up to the reader, but that was kind of what I was thinking. And while I was doing this work, I just kept telling myself, I might as well just go for it. This is my first contemporary. I may never write another contemporary, I kept thinking, so I might as well just do the thing. What's the worst that could happen to Sophia in this moment? Because it's told single POV, so we're in her head, and it's oh no, her parents found out she was fired. Oh no, Caitlin comes to her house before she's supposed to. Oh no, these things happen. And every time I just kept telling myself, well, I might as well do it and just really go there. And there is a point where Sophia goes there, or she thinks she does, right? And she's just all in on something, even though she hates herself for it. And I knew that readers would have a problem with it. And I've been doing this long enough. I know how a romance reader is, and I just did it anyway. And so now when I get tagged in reviews and I kind of take a peek at some of the comments. Thankfully, I've only been tagged in good reviews. People have not tagged me, knock on wood, in any bad reviews. But I will take a little glimpse at the comments, and there's inevitably, I have thoughts. And I'm just like, good. Good. Because the way I wrote this book, I want you to have thoughts. I want you to feel something. And I don't want it to be boring. You may not like Sophia. You may not agree with how she acts in this book or what she does. And you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to agree with her. She's being messy. And we like mess. So many of us like mess. And you know what? Mess is very natural. I think a lot of people, make bad decisions and do the dumb thing. And so I don't want perfection from my characters. I don't think perfection is realistic. And so more so than any miscommunication, I think expecting characters to make the choices you would make or to say the things that you would say under pressure is just not realistic.
I can say that Sophia was certainly messy. But to your point about like this plot line only making sense if you had enough character development for Sophia, I saw that because you spent time from the beginning kind of explaining through her backstory how she could get to a place where this would even make sense in her head. Because obviously as the reader, we're like, girl, come on. Like, can you not see the signs?
You're a dummy.
But
Yes.
Because we've been in her head, because we know about maybe some of the things that she internalized about herself when she was in middle school and in high school, because of some of the romantic experiences that she had when she was in college, we can see, even if we don't agree, I think that you lay the groundwork for the reader to understand how she could get to this place, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, she's afraid and doesn't want to be vulnerable. And I love that about her because she's, as you mentioned about the feminine rage, right? It starts off with her angry and her reaping the consequences of her standing up for herself, right? A coworker stole from her and she didn't let him get away with it. And unfortunately, she's the one that suffered from it. So we know things about her. She's willing to defend herself. She's willing to, she's a loyal friend. There's these things. And yet, she thinks so poorly of herself. She can't get out of her own way. And I think that, I love that about her. I love that she's not, this strong person all the time. I love that she battles her confidence like we all do. And I'm glad that you were able to see, her experiences that led her to just being an idiot.
Yeah. We all have those moments, I guess.
Yes. And she has a lot of them in this book.
She does. But she gets it right at the end. She gets it right. So speaking of choices that Sophia makes, she's keeping a very, very large career secret from the people who are closest to her, from her family, from her best friends. And that's kind of what lands her in hot water to begin with. So I'm curious if the secret identity was something that you had plotted from the start, or did it grow out of wanting to write more about women's work going uncredited?
That's a great question. And I think initially, though, Sophia's keeping secrets just for character work, like what I felt like I knew about her and how she felt about her place within her family, because it's established she comes from a very overachieving family. Like her father's a professor, her mother's a curator, and her brother's a pediatric cardiologist. Her sister-in-law is like this endocrinologist. Like they have these like high profile, really respected jobs. And I think there's like a line in the book where she talks about how she wasn't busting through glass ceilings, but she had this like corporate job that she could be proud of. And then suddenly she didn't. And she talks about numerous times about how she makes silly little videos on her phone. Because I think for her, creating content is not a long-term thing. She's smart enough to recognize the opportunity that it brings her in that moment, right? She goes viral. She has a background in marketing. She's like, okay, well, I'm going to capitalize on this, but I don't think she thinks of it as a viable career. And I think for her, because it's not this viable career in her own head, she doesn't want to tell people about it. Because why? This is just something that she's doing to get by. And I think that she's proud of what she's talking about, but I think for her, it doesn't fit into what I believe that she thinks people expect from her. And as an eldest daughter in a Latina family, I can absolutely understand that. Like you have what you think is a role, what you think is a responsibility, and you do your best to fit that, whatever that may be, however your family defines that. And for her, she feels that she has to uphold this certain image, and so she's striving to do that while she's secretly creating these videos and doing a really good job about it. But it's not a success that she feels that she can share with them. And so then, because she's keeping secrets from her parents, then she starts keeping secrets from her friends, and because it's especially from Caitlin, who's also a content creator, but like in a high-end capacity, right? So for Sophia, I can't tell Caitlin because she does, she works with Chanel and she works with all these high-end boutiques, and she wouldn't understand or have time for my silly little feminist videos or whatever. And so I think she is her keeping secrets, I feel like, plays into her as a character. And then it gives readers something to be frustrated about, because just tell them, right? Just tell them. But I think that sometimes the lie gets so big, right? Or the omission gets so big that to actually reveal it becomes scarier than the initial lie or omission that was told. And I think that's very much where she's at, where she's like, oh crap, I've let this go on for so long. How I go, hey, surprise, I have all these followers and I tell all these stories. And, that's why she is so panicked when people recognize her when she goes out in public. Like, oh my gosh, this part of me that I've kept hidden online is now existing in the real world. And she's been able to kind of block that out or ignore it until it's literally in her face. And then she panics. She's a girl who wants to be in control, and she's not.
Yeah. Well, certainly losing a job can do that to you.
And in such a way too.
Yeah. Okay, so looking to Futureward, we were going to ask you about, is there a historical idea, say, in your back pocket, or are you going to switch between historical and contemporary moving forward? I know you've taught some about that, but I just want to give you this space. Is there anything else you want to say about your forthcoming book or anything else that you...
I would love to, because I'm so excited. So the first book in my Victoria Mountain Climber series, the series is called The Daring Spares Society, which is meant to be indulgent and cringy because the 3 male main characters who will go across the series, they were dubbed this when they were at Eton, as only pompous, rich boys can be. And so the story follows these 3 second sons who travel across Europe, climbing its tallest peaks. And in their quest for respectability, they want their their contributions to be acknowledged. They want their feats to be celebrated because they've kind of become media darlings, right? The broadsheets love to talk about them, but they haven't earned the respect of their fellow alpinists and climbers. And so they set off to Nepal, and they're going to go climb a Himalayan peak because of course they think they can do that. And they arrive in Nepal and discover that their guide up the mighty Annapurna, which is where the story will be set, is a woman. And she also has her own, test to prove. She wants to stay in Nepal and work with her father, who is a climbing guide, and he wants her to return to London to marry a proper British husband. And so she makes him a wager that she'll take his British climbing clients to the top of the Annapurna summit. And if she does, she gets to stay in Nepal. But if she doesn't, she has to go to England and do as she's bid. And so they both have these things that they're trying to work for. And there's so much ridiculous climbing, climbing lore in this. I call it an adventure historical romance because it literally takes place on the journey to Annapurna and then up the mountain. And the first book is called Recklessly Yours, and it will be out in January.
Ah, this is so exciting, and I don't think I had that combination of
No.
rope genres on my bingo card.
I know. I think it's a lot of fun, and I just got the finished cover right before I went on tour, and it just took my breath away. I really cannot wait to share it. And I mentioned that I wrote this book in 2019, so it's just been kind of sitting on my hard drive. I think about it. Every time I thought about it, I would feel wistful because I had the best time writing it. It was so fun. I got to indulge my hyperfixation and, have two people kissing in a tent on the side of a mountain. It was so fun. And so I really, really hope that shows in the book when readers finally read it.
Oh, I'm sure it will. That kind of passion usually comes across in the page.
Yeah.
So, cannot wait.
So glad. Thank you. I will just throw out, I am going to be in an anthology series later in 2027.
Oh, cool.
And my story will feature Oliver Dalton, who is the brother in my Dalton series, my set of novellas, The Captain's Midwinter Bride, On a Midsummer Night, and his novella will be featured in that series. I will say it's a marriage of convenience, is kind of the theme of the anthology. So I'm really excited to share it.
So much.
Oh, that's so exciting. We have so many things to look forward to from you this next year. I'm pumped.
Thanks. I am currently working on another contemporary, but we'll see what happens with it. At least for the foreseeable future right now, everything that's set in stone, it's all historical.
Okay. Well, I think it's time for rapid fire round.
Yes, we always
bring it
like
on.
to end with some fun little rapid fire questions. So, tequila or wine?
Oh, wine. Actually, okay. So I just want to clarify, especially because I'm a Mexican American, I should drink tequila. Oh my God. When I was 19, I got I had a very bad night on tequila, and I have not been able to drink it since. So I would prefer a glass, a crisp glass of Sauv Blanc would be my choice.
Okay. I feel like everybody has a story with a particular type of liquor that really ended that line of liquor for you.
Yes.
Mhm. Yep. It's like one smell and you're like, no, I can't do it. I can't do it.
Tequila.
Yep. Okay. So, would you rather write a Duke or write a TikTok influencer?
Wow. I don't know. Now that I've written an influencer, right? That could be fun. What if he's an influencer who has a whole series? People do sketches or skits on social media, and he's a dupe. I don't know. I don't know. That would be kind of fun. So I guess both. If I can find a way to combine them.
Okay. I was like, maybe we'll read about that in 2028. I don't know.
I mean, maybe.
You heard it here first, folks.
Or maybe he's on a show, like a Bridgerton show, and he's a duke on the show.
Okay.
Look at now I'm thinking about
Yep.
possible
Now you're going to
story
be going
ideas.
on a
Going. Okay, last rapid fire question. You're on a really long road trip. Are you going true crime podcast or romance audiobook?
Okay, this is a great question because I listen to so many true crime podcasts. So I think it's in my bio because I was always listening to a true crime podcast. But over the last year, I have not really listened to very many. And I've been listening to more romance audiobooks. So, long road trip, if my husband's with me, we're going to listen to a podcast because he's not going to want to listen to an audiobook. But if it's just me in the car by myself, I'll listen to an audiobook for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So it just depends on my company.
Yeah.
Is there a true crime podcast that's your favorite?
I really like podcasts that will focus on like a single story and like the episodes are kind of investigating that. So there is a podcast called True Crime BS, which is about the serial killer Israel Keys, and it has like 7 seasons and goes so in depth. And the host, his voice is so soothing. So I really like that podcast.
Okay.
But if you like a new episode a new like topic every episode, or like maybe short series on like one topic, the Prosecutors podcast, they're really good because they're working attorneys, and so I really appreciate kind of their take on cases and how they kind of approach it, and they always surprise me. I think like I go into something thinking a certain way, and they'll bring up like a totally different perspective I hadn't even considered. So I really do like them too.
Thanks for the rest. So finally, 2 questions we ask all our guests. First, what are your favorite tropes in romance, either to read or write?
I feel like it's cheating because I feel like everyone says enemies to lovers, but written right, it's so good. But I think like a spin-off of enemies to lovers is antagonists to lovers. I feel like that works better in a non-romantic sense, right? So like office rivals, or I even like the boyfriend's brother, or I can think of a whole bunch of different situations, but I really like antagonists to lovers. I'm also a sucker for second chance romances. I love to learn what went wrong right prior and watch them kind of come back from that, and why does the romance work now when it didn't work then, and the exploration of their history together. I just think a good second chance romance is gold. And when I think of second chance romances, I think of like Tara DeWitt, right? She writes amazing second chances. She's the one that stands out in my brain, but I know there are like many others who do that trope so incredibly well. One I like to write, that's a good question. I don't know, I'm willing to tackle anything. I did like a kind of love triangle cheating adjacent one, and it almost killed me writing it, but I'm glad I did it.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to try all of them.
Yeah. Well, we look forward to reading them all. And then finally, what do you recommend that we should add to our TBR, besides obviously your books, if folks haven't read them, who are watching, or what are you reading right now? So either what would you recommend to folks to add to their TBR, or what are you reading right now?
So I have on my TV, I'm actually finishing the audiobook for Tara DeWitt's Lost and Found, her newest release.
Okay.
It's so good. Next up, I'm going to be reading Old Flames by Nadine Gonzalez. It came out on the same day that Mutual Discord came out. And I'm really excited. They're like writers. There's like ghostly speculative elements. I'm like really excited to read in time for spooky season. So I'm excited about that one. I also read a really wonderful historical recently called His Awful Grace by Anne Knight. And that is a second chance, like a estranged married couple kind of coming back together. They've been estranged for 8 years. And there was some stuff that happened during those 8 years. The female main character had some trauma, and I think that Anne did a superb job, not only just writing about that trauma, but how they overcome it. I think it's a beautiful read.
Well, great. We have new books to read, new podcasts to listen to, and also can't wait to read about mountain climbers coming up in January. I feel like January is a good time. I don't feel like
Yeah.
we're also chilling out with them.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Leon. This has been so great. You really like your books. It's clear the passion that you're bringing to it, and the historical elements are just like so fun to nerd out on with you.
Yeah.
So
Thank you
yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that because sometimes I'm like, am I the only idiot that likes this stuff? So I appreciate it.
No, absolutely. All right. Well, have a great night, and thank you again so much.